Life is not for the faint of heart. The world you see before you is not what it was, nor what it will be. It is shifting, crumbling, rearranging itself in ways that defy comprehension. And yet, in the midst of all this chaos, there is a calling, one that is not for the ordinary, but for the unshakable. You are not here by accident. You are not placed in this moment in history to simply observe, to watch from the sidelines as the tides of change sweep over the earth. Or you were born for such a time as this. And in times of great uncertainty, it is not the strongest that survive, nor the loudest, nor even the most intelligent. It is those who stand firm in truth, those who refuse to bend to the pressures of deception and fear, those who hold fast to an unshakable foundation. The world will call you foolish. It will tell you to conform, to compromise, to let go of the convictions that make you different. It will mock your faith, ridicule your hope, and seek to redefine your purpose. But listen, truth does not change because the world rejects it. The measure of reality is not dictated by popular opinion. The unshakable are not those who chase after the ever-changing ideals of culture, but those who root themselves in something eternal. And yet to stand firm in this world is no easy task. It demands courage, not the kind of courage that seeks applause, but the kind that walks in quiet obedience even when it is costly. It is easy to stand when there is no opposition. It is easy to believe when faith is fashionable. But when the ground beneath you begins to shake, when the world tells you to be silent, when compromise appears more convenient than conviction, that is when you will be tested. That is when you will see what you are truly made of. Do you understand what it means to be unshakable? It does not mean you will not face storms. It does not mean you will not feel fear. It means you will not be moved by them. It means that when everything around you screams for you to surrender, you plant your feet and declare, I will not bow. Because there is something within you stronger than the forces that oppose you. There is something within you greater than the voices that try to silence you. And that something is the power of truth. History is filled with men and women who stood when the world tried to break them. They were laughed at, ridiculed, and rejected. And yet, long after their persecutors faded into obscurity, their names remained, their legacies endured. Why? Because they understood that strength is not in numbers, nor in approval, but in conviction. They understood that it is better to stand alone in truth than to be celebrated in a lie. The world does not need more people who follow the path of least resistance. It does not need more voices echoing the empty philosophies of the age. It needs people who refuse to compromise. It needs people who carry the fire of something greater. People who will stand against the tide and say, I will not be moved. And make no mistake, this is not about arrogance. This is not about pride. This is about knowing who you are. This is about understanding that you were not created to be a pawn in someone else's agenda. You are not designed to be molded by the opinions of the masses. You were created for something higher. You were called to be a light in the darkness, to be a voice when others are silent, to be a foundation when everything else is sinking. And so the question is not whether the world will try to shake you. It will. The question is not whether you will face opposition. You will. The real question is, will you stand? Will you remain unshaken when everything around you is trembling? Will you hold on to truth even when it costs you? There is a fire that cannot be extinguished, a strength that does not come from human willpower, but from something far greater. It is the strength of knowing that your purpose is not defined by this world, that your calling is not dictated by its changing values. It is the strength of understanding that you are part of something unshakable. And once you grasp that, truly grasp it, nothing will be able to move you. The world is not a playground, it is a battlefield. And whether you realize it or not, you are in the middle of a war. Not a war of flesh and blood, but a war of ideas, of principles, of truth against deception, courage against fear. This war is not fought with swords and shields, but with convictions, with resilience, with the refusal to surrender to the forces that seek to break you. Look around you. Fear is the weapon of choice in this age. It is used to control, to manipulate, to silence. Fear tells you to stay in line, to not speak out, to blend in, to do whatever it takes to avoid discomfort. It whispers that it is better to be safe than to be bold, better to be accepted than to be right, better to shrink back than to stand up. And yet, every time you give in to fear, you lose a piece of yourself. You trade your authority for comfort, your voice for approval, your destiny for an illusion of security. You were not meant to live like that. You were not designed to be weak, hesitant, unsure of who you are or what you believe. You were not created to cower in the face of opposition. You were meant to stand, to fight, to take up the armor of something greater than yourself. Because make no mistake, the battle is real and neutrality is not an option. Either you rise or you fall. Either you take up your authority or you surrender it to the enemy. And here's the truth. The enemy does not fear those who live in comfort. He does not tremble at those who play it safe. He fears those who understand their power, those who refuse to be intimidated, those who stand their ground even when the odds seem impossible. He fears the warriors, the ones who refuse to be silent, the ones who know that they were called for something higher. But to be that kind of person, you must be prepared. You must be armored, equipped, ready for the fight ahead. And that does not happen by accident. Strength is not given, it is built. Courage is not inherited, it is forged. And those who walk in power do so because they have made the choice to reject fear and embrace the struggle. What does it mean to be armored for battle? It means you do not let your emotions dictate your action. It means you do not allow fear to paralyze you. It means that when the world tries to shake you, you plant your feet and say, I will not move. It means that you train yourself to think clearly, to speak boldly, to stand firmly on truth, no matter what it costs you, and it will cost you. Do not believe for a moment that you can be a warrior and be comfortable at the same time. Do not think that you can stand against the forces of deception and still be applauded by the world. The moment you choose to walk in truth, you will face opposition. You will be criticized, rejected, ridiculed. And that is the price of greatness. That is the price of being unshakable. But hear me on this. What you gain in return is far greater than what you lose. You gain the strength to walk through fire without being consumed. You gain the clarity to see through the lies that entangle so many. You gain the authority to speak with conviction when others are silent. And above all, you gain the confidence of knowing that your life is built on something that cannot be shaken. The world does not need more people who are afraid. It does not need more people who sit on the sidelines waiting for permission to be bold. It needs warriors. It needs men and women who will stand against the tide of compromise, who will refuse to bow to fear, who will walk in power, not in weakness. And so I ask you, are you ready? Are you willing to fight for something greater than yourself? Are you willing to stand even when it costs you? Are you willing to reject the lie that fear is your master? Because the time is now. Not tomorrow, not when it is easy, now. Take up your armor, walk in your authority, speak with boldness, and when the world tries to shake you, stand your ground. Because you were not created to be a casualty, you were created to be a warrior.